Welcome, everyone, to today's edition of Online for Authors. My guest today is Paul Trammell, author of Until They Bury Me, which is a psychological thriller that will keep you turning pages all night long. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Carol.
My pleasure. So let's begin with your protagonist in this book. His name is Chris, and he suddenly discovers or rediscovers his college sweetheart, Azalea. So it's obvious right away that she's very attractive, but what about Azalea does Chris feel draws him to what he hopes will rekindle that relationship? What does she have that others don't? Is it really sex?
Initially, it is the fact that his life is in shambles. He's just gotten out of prison. He's screwed up everything, and he wants a normal life. And he finds, he sees his ex-girlfriend on Instagram, and he says hi, and they start chatting, and it's rekindled. Their old relationship is rekindled. He sees a chance at a normal life. She's smart. She went to a good, she stayed in school when he didn't, and went on and became a lawyer. And so all of a sudden he sees the chance at a good life, at a normal life, where he's back at his old, profession of hanging drywall, and he just feels like he's just a total loser. And he sees in Azalea a quick, all of a sudden, good life, good, comfortable life in a city with a beautiful woman that he's in love with. And so it's a dream, it's like a dream that forms in his head. And I think, I think a lot of people have been there where you think, oh, this person's just going to make everything so great, and,
right.
and you rush into it, and maybe it's not what you expect.
And that's maybe not what it was supposed to be. And we find out immediately, almost, they get married. And before long, not only are they married, but he's discovered that she's talking to someone in another room and having some paranoid hallucinations. Tell us a little bit about the man in the gray suit that she keeps referring to, and what happens to Chris as he becomes aware that there is something going on in that other room.
Yeah, well, we find out that she hallucinates and talks to, she's schizophrenic. That's the bottom line. Of course, he doesn't know that. He didn't know it when they were in college. Schizophrenia typically strikes people in their 20s. They can be perfectly normal right up until that. So he didn't know her until he didn't know her when she was schizophrenic. When he knew her, she was not schizophrenic. So he rushes in, he falls in love, they get married, and then he starts to slowly realize that she is talking to someone who's not there and speaking in different languages. And
right.
She's an artist, so she sketches, and this is how it all starts. She's sketching a scene of a park, and he's there with her, and there's this man in a gray suit that just doesn't fit, and he didn't see him. And the first time he thinks, oh, I just didn't see that guy. The second time he thinks, all right, why do you keep sketching this guy who's not there? And she says, what do you mean? Of course he's there. And then she's talking to him, and then eventually he comes to realize this is just somebody who she sees and talks to in a hallucination.
Well, not only is she talking to him, she's talking to him in another language. She's talking to him
in
French.
Sometimes she speaks in French. Sometimes she speaks even in another language that's kind of undefined. It's all very strange, and Chris doesn't really know what the heck's going on. But this guy gives her advice and tells her things, which is often the case with schizophrenics. And it all becomes part of, it all weaves its way into the mystery that's unfolding during the whole book that comes to a head at the end.
Right. And he actually believes that he has to keep his knowledge quiet because he's afraid if he lets her know what he thinks is happening, then she'll disappear. He's so in love with her that he wants to try to figure it out. But I got a kick about him going across the street to the garage with the binoculars and trying to look into the other room to see if he could see who she was talking to.
Right. But he comes to think that maybe the man in the gray suit's a real person.
Right.
And
he does for a while, believe
and
that.
and if so, he wants to catch this person, and and maybe so it becomes a question, throughout the book: is this man in a gray suit a hallucination, or isn't he, or is he a little, or is there both, or both? It's a question, and we don't really know until the end. Well, I know. I don't know what the readers, think, but
Right.
but to answer your question, why doesn't he push to say, look, he's not real, and he kind of does at one point, but he plays along at other times, because that's what you have to do. I've had a couple of schizophrenic friends, and what their hallucinations are real. They're just as real as you and me to them.
It's amazing.
They don't like see a fuzzy outline of a person. They see a person, a real person who talks, looks just like everybody else. So to straight up tell them, like, oh, that's not real, you're hallucinating, that can just put up a barrier between you two. It can be a conversation ender. It can make them lose trust in you.
Yeah. The other thing I was amazed that he thought sexually they had a really wonderful match. And I would imagine that someone who spent some time in prison and then who finds this dream sex life. I mean, what really happens when he thinks that he's in for a crazy night of sex with scarves and belts and all of that? Explain what happens beyond her movements and her chanting.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, one of the points I wanted to make was that sex can, very, very good sex with someone can make you think illogically,
right.
and it pushed him over the edge of allowing the marriage to happen. Basically, it kind of shuts down the logic in the brain sometimes. So that was kind of one of the points I wanted to make in the beginning. But then to get to the scene where he's having he's tied up, he's let her tie him up, and and they're having sex, and all of a sudden he's having this weird out of body experience. There's a couple of things going on there. One, I was trying to also make the point throughout the book that what if schizophrenics really can see a different dimension? What if they really are somehow not responding to physics the way everybody else is? They can sense things we can't sense, or maybe they can. She claims to be the entangler in the book, and that's a physical principle where quantum particles are entangled, and when they're separated,
right,
one of them's movement affects the other one. They can be separated by miles, and but they still affect each other somehow. And so she's telling him that she's the entangler. She really is part of some other dimension or whatever. And Chris doesn't understand what the heck she's talking about, but he does have a bizarre out of body experience during sex, and that was kind of 2 points I'm making. One is that we don't understand schizophrenia. We can't cure it. It's just this weird thing that a lot of people, 1 in 100 people experience, 1 in 100. And maybe they really can see a different dimension. Physicists all accept that there's probably different dimensions. We only sense the 3, up, down, left, and right, the 3 axes, and time maybe being a 4th, but maybe they really can see alternate universes, or people that aren't there, or ghosts, or just things we don't understand. That's what I'm getting at. And there's also the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also what I observed was that not only did she seem to be seeing other people, but she didn't seem to be seeing him when he was there. I mean, the times when he would make her lunch, and he would bring it to her, and here it is, honey, and she would ignore it like he wasn't even in the room. And then 2 minutes later, she goes out in the kitchen and makes herself the same exact sandwich, and comes in and sits down and eats hers. And then, of course, he gets furious and eats the first one. But, it's cracked me up. But also, why did you make him have his own apartment? Was that to hide the money he was getting from the mafia that he didn't want her to know? Or was it really because I think he had a gun and she didn't want him to have a gun? Is that more
Those
of
are
the
both reasons. Yeah, those are both reasons. There's a few reasons. Those two, there's a couple more first it was suggested by Madeline that maybe he would like to have an apartment, and it just so happens there's one for rent right above mine, and I've got the realtor's card in my pocket. So Madeline suggested it, and that's a clue. That's a clue to what happens in the end. And
Really?
then, and Chris goes along because he needs a place. She won't, Azalea won't let him smoke weed in the house.
Right. Right.
It's driving him a little bit crazy having to deal with her hallucinations. So he'd like to have a place where he can, and he'd like to have a TV, he wants
Right.
he wants a TV. And he needs a place to keep his gun, which become guns, and all the money he's making. And so it just makes sense. He's making a lot of money from the mafia, so he can afford the apartment, and he needs those other things too.
He meets a friend of hers. Well, why did you place that friend in there?
He meets. Are you talking about Madeline?
Yes.
Madeline. Okay. So Madeline plays a pretty big role in the book. I don't want to give away the end.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to.
She is. Yeah. In the beginning, Madeline is part of the sexual fantasy that pushes Chris over the edge to get married, to stop thinking logically. Also, when the proposal happened, Chris had just gotten stoned for the first time since he'd been in the city. So that was part of it too. That was another point I was making. Like, he gets high and he's not quite sure what's going on. The next thing you know, he's getting married. Madeline, she plays a few vital roles in the book. That I don't know if we're going to.
Well, you kept me, almost every 2 or 3 pages, I was sure, oh no, this is going this way. And then it wouldn't. And then I thought, it's very good. It's a very good book for keeping you guessing. You just think you've got it, and then, oh no, that's not what's happening.
I'm so glad to hear that, because one of the main principles I was working with while writing the book was that you never want the obvious thing to happen. You always want the opposite of the obvious to happen, or something contrary to the obvious you want to happen, over and over again, so that you keep guessing and so that it's interesting. And it all has to make sense. That's kind of the trick, for a good book like that, is to have that keep happening and it all makes sense. And hopefully everybody understands what happens in the end, or they understand it enough to.
The end is something else. The end is shocking. The end is the surprise. So knowing about all these twists and turns, let me ask you, do you write as a plotter, or are you considered a pantster?
Both, a little bit of both.
You do a little bit of both.
Mostly,
you start out plotting, and then it takes itself where it wants to go.
Yeah, typically. Well, I'll tell you what happened for this book. All of a sudden, I had an idea, and I thought about it, and it snowballed. And I had the plot. I had the beginning of the plot anyway, in my head within a half hour, and then I sat down and I wrote out maybe 3 or 4 big messy writing in a notebook, just to get it all down. And that was the extent of the outlining I did. And it all happened. It's a funny story. I was visiting family, and my father was driving my nieces, his grandchildren, to school. So he's got an apartment, and he and my mother had rented an apartment for like 6 months in the town where my sister lives. So, and it was just so they could be with their grandchildren and help, and drive them to school. It's just a way to spend time with your grandkids, basically, and help my sister out, because she's a stay-at-home mom with 3 daughters, all in school, all having to be driven somewhere.
Yeah.
So I went to visit, stayed with my parents in the apartment, was riding in my dad's car to take my niece to school. And as we're driving through their apartment building, the parking garage in the apartment building, he points at a black SUV. It's a black Hummer, jet black. It's covered in dust, like it hasn't been anywhere in a long time, and it's double parked. It's literally right on the line. It's like sitting right on the line. So it's taking up 2 spaces, and it's in a parking building in Orlando, Florida. Like, you never see that, And my dad says that Hummer's been there the whole time we've been here. It has never moved, and it's never been towed. It's never got a ticket or anything. It's taking up 2 spaces. So I'm immediately thinking like, oh, what is that? Can I make up a quick story about that? Oh, it's a CIA agent. It's got a safe house here. He's got a safe apartment here, and that doesn't happen in my story. But there is a black SUV double parked, covered in dust.
Right, there is.
Yeah, that's where it came from, and somehow that little episode and that little story in my head made this story happen. I don't know how I leaped from that to the story, but it all happened during the drive, taking my niece Antoinette to school. And this whole story was rolling around in my head and building. And when we got back to my dad's apartment, I busted out a notebook and quickly wrote down everything. And then I spent the next 2 years, writing the story.
Is that what
from that point I was pantsing, from that point forward, it was all pantsing.
Yeah. So I think that many authors are now doing a little of both, plotting and writing it from the seat of their pants. My background was in news. And so when I first started writing mysteries, I had to continue plotting because most of my work was nonfiction. And so it actually happened. And I remember, I think the first 3 books I wrote were all cold case mysteries that were actually documented. And so plotting that way just made sense to me. And then all of a sudden in book 4, I think, I decided to change the protagonist and make her an investigative reporter, that she was an investigative reporter, and I started to make her a private investigator. And without even knowing it, I started out, and then suddenly I was writing something that I hadn't plotted. And I looked at it and I thought that, that's really interesting. And the more authors I speak with now, the more I hear, well, I do a little of both. I plot some, and then it takes its own life. Yeah. And I think that's really what makes the best of the books. They just seem to work a lot better. It gives you a chance to go places that you probably would never have gone.
Right. You have to keep that option open at all times to go wherever.
Yeah. And I was so, regimented to the news is the news is the news. And that's what it is. And so, you can't fake the news. Just a joke. Until today, you can't fake news. Anyway, like I said, the ending of this book is what really threw me. I never thought that's where it was going. So we're not going to tell people where it went, but if they are more interested in seeing more about it, there's a link on Facebook called Novels and Latte, and we have a lot of our authors' books there for people to win. So if you, if you're listening or watching and you want to know a little bit more, and you have to read the ending in order to make this whole thing work right. So do that, and you might even win a digital copy of Paul's book. Now, I understand that you are in the process, or how far along are you in this next book? And tell me a little bit about this.
The next book is finished, and it releases Sunday, March 1st.
It is.
So it's probably out when this episode airs, I imagine, right?
Yeah. So what's this one about?
This one is also a thriller, and it takes place on a sailboat. I'm a sailor. I'm on a sailboat right now. I live on a boat. And I'll tell you how I got the idea for this one. I was sailing through the Bahamas a few years ago, and I decided I'm a solo sailor. I sail by myself. I'm single. And you often see people online looking for who want to sail, who are looking for boats to get on, but boats that need crew or boats that want crew or whatever. And there's Facebook groups like that. But anyway, someone who knows me via Facebook just sent me a message and said, oh, here's this woman who's in your area who wants to sail south. And if you're going south through the Bahamas, towards Georgetown. Maybe you'd like to take her with you. And I thought, well, I hear, why shouldn't I, not at least take a look, see who this person is. Here I am, a single guy on a boat, and there's a woman who wants to sail. Of course I'm intrigued,
Right.
So anyway, I met this woman and decided to take her on, and she sailed with me for a few weeks, and it was fine. But so there was no thriller, there was no drama that happened. The book didn't happen, but I told my mother what I was doing, and she got concerned, and she said, please send me a photograph of yourself every day while this woman's on board.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, okay, sure. I wonder why. So then, months later, after this whole sailing episode, I was talking to my father, and I said, it's kind of funny. Mom wanted a photo of me every day. I wonder if maybe she was concerned about my emotional state, with a woman on board. And Dad laughed and said, no, Paul. He said, your mother thought this woman might kill you, steal your boat, and impersonate you in texts. So when Mom texts you, this woman might answer the text and say, yes, Mom, everything's fine, and impersonate me. So I thought, immediately, that's a book. Like that's a novel right there, So that's where the idea came from. And that's pretty much, that's kind of how the book starts. There's a guy who takes a woman on board. She's a little quirky. He's a little quirky. And there's an episode where he ends up overboard, and she's a novice. She's a novice sailor. She's an inexperienced sailor. She wants to learn. He's been teaching her things. He goes overboard. She tries to rescue him. She does everything she can to rescue him. Spends 2 or 3 days trying to find him. And in the meantime, she's kind of losing her senses. She's not sleeping. She's not eating. She's not taking her medication. So this one's also a psychological thriller. There's psychology, and when I say psychological thriller, I mean like there's psychology involved.
Some psychology,
I don't like the title of that genre, psychological thriller, because when I hear those two words, I think about what I write, books about crazy people, or books where at least one person's got some crazy. But the genre really means, you could really call it domestic thriller, I think, because if you go look at psychological thrillers, they're all a woman who's mad at her husband, and they're not all that, but that's pretty
right,
close.
Right.
Yeah, they're typically what I would call a domestic thriller. So what I'm talking about is psychology is involved, and it's a thriller. So anyway, that's what happens. She tries to rescue him. She can't. And she's kind of going crazy. And then she gets a text from his mom. Jake, is everything okay? Where have you been? We couldn't contact you. Your boat was sitting in the same place for 3 days. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And she has to make that decision. Like, do I fess up? She feels guilty because she kind of made it. I mean, of course you would make a few mistakes as a novice. You're not going to remember everything you're supposed to do in a man overboard situation. And she doesn't. There's a couple of key things that she forgot to do. And now she thinks she's going to be in trouble. She's going to be in trouble with the law. Can she fess up? Can she deal with it? She can't. And she thinks she takes the quick, easy way out and texts back, all's well.
Wow.
On his phone to his mom. And that begins the spiraling into madness, where the book goes, kind of like Until They Bury Me. It's another twisty plot. Yeah. Where unexpected things happen, and the end is, I think a good ending should be unexpected,
right? And
but,
so
it makes sense.
Yeah, another unexpected ending. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've had such an amazing verifying. So your life has been everywhere, it seems, from what I could read. So. I mean, you're sailing, you live on a boat. You were a teacher at one point, right?
Yes.
And so tell me, how did you go from one thing to the other? Was it that you were looking for something in particular, or what drew you to the places that you found yourself in?
Well, after college, I didn't really know what to do. I typical story. You go to college thinking you're going to be one thing, and you come out not wanting to do that anymore.
Right.
So I had a few different jobs. One was a teacher, but what I really wanted to be was a musician. And I played guitar and bass in bands for 20 some years in Florida, and had some success at it, but it never really could be a life, a career. It's hard to make money as a musician, but and I was a hard partier. I was a hard partier, and eventually I sobered up. I quit drinking. I quit everything.
Right.
Quit smoking
even
weed.
Marijuana. Right.
Yeah, 11 years ago, 3 or 4 days ago,
Amazing.
was 11 years for the weed, and 10 years for the weed, and then 11 years for drinking was earlier this month. So while I was doing that, the first year of not drinking, I was putting cash in a box just as a reward for not drinking, just as a visual, like tactile reward, actual dollar bills. And I decided after a year, if I make it, when I make it to 1 year of sobriety, I'm going to spend this on something good, something fun, maybe a vacation, maybe a new toy. Right. I don't know what. Well, I spent it on a sailing class, a 1 week sailing class. Uh-huh. And I loved it. I mean, I loved it. I was in St. Augustine, Florida. We're taking a 36-foot yacht out, sailing it in the winter and strong wind and out the inlet and into the ocean. And I'm behind the wheel steering this boat, and 2 other students are on the lines tacking, and then I'm on one of the lines, and it was just incredibly fun. And then I started reading books about sailing, and I found one about single-handed sailing. I'm like, what? Single-handed sailing? What's that? Oh, one person can sail a boat by themselves across the ocean and go anywhere they want. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I want to do that. And then I discovered Bernard Matessier, a single-hand sailor, author, French guy, wrote some fantastic books that just put you in, make you feel like you're there, really just make you feel like you're there on the boat, on the ocean, experiencing everything. Really great books. The Long Way is the one that really grabbed me. And then I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be a sailor who writes. I want to be an author who sails to interesting places and writes about them. That's my goal. I made that goal, and I made it happen, and here I am.
And you're doing it. Yeah. So do you go to a certain place and stay there for a while to write, or what is your discipline like when you are writing?
Well, I've written 4 books about sailing. 3 of them I wrote while I was, I guess all 4, wrote most of them while I was underway, while I was sailing. For instance, the last one is called Sailing to Newfoundland, Canada. One of the big goals I had when I bought this boat was to sail to the fjords on the south coast of Newfoundland. They're fjords that poke up into the island, and you can sail up into them with 1,000-foot cliffs on both sides of you, and anchor and be in complete deep wilderness with no civilization around. And that's a rare thing to find anywhere on Earth. Good anchorages where there are no houses and no buildings.
I would imagine, yeah,
and no roads and nothing. And Newfoundland has lots of it. It's incredible. So I wrote while I was doing that. I wrote while I was underway. The first 8 days were sailing from Florida to Maine. So I wrote every day, while on the boat, just pen and paper, and and I also use my phone to record my voice. That's a great way to do it if you're doing something where it's difficult to write, like on a sailboat.
Yeah.
And then when I arrive, it's much easier. You can get down to putting more words on paper and also write about what's going on that day, what's happening, what does it look like, how does it feel.
Right. So you actually do use pen and paper.
I do. Yeah, when I'm doing that, I use pen and paper. For my novels, I mostly write on the computer. The rough draft went down on pen and paper. The novels are typically I'm sitting in a quiet anchorage here, I was going to
say, yeah.
Yeah, I can use my computer.
If I didn't know, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, right. I write pen and paper. I write poetry with pen and paper.
Right.
That works better. I like to be outside. Yeah, with a nice pen. Like I have a nice fountain pen.
Right.
And a little notebook.
Nice calm day.
And Yeah, and I
It's a
sit on the
dream
deck
of
of my
many.
boat.
I'm sure that's a dream of many.
Yeah.
So is there another book in your future after this one that's just been released?
I'm working on a book of short stories, of science fiction short stories.
Oh.
I have a Substack page where I publish a short story on the first of every month.
Uh-huh.
Lately, most of them have been science fiction, and I've decided to take my favorite ones and maybe write a few new ones as well, and make a book, a sci-fi short story book. Yeah, I love science fiction. I love good science fiction. Well,
yeah, I think
good.
You do. Yeah.
Of course, it's got to be good in my opinion. Anything does.
Right.
But yeah, I love a good sci-fi book. I used to read Isaac Asimov when I was younger. I've read a lot of his books.
Who's your favorite author to read?
I think my favorite author is Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, I've read most of it. I think I've read all of his books.
Really?
And even a couple of his screenplays. I'll read anything he's written. He's gone now, rest his soul. But I've read all of his books, and if I ever find one that I haven't read, I'll read it. But I think I've read them all. I love authors that are still alive. I love Libby Grant. She writes under the pen name Olivia Hawker.
That's interesting.
Yeah, her books are really good. Let's see. I just read some books that were really good. All the Light We Cannot See.
Oh, the Light We Cannot See. That was
good. I think the last name of the author is Doerr.
Yeah, I can't think of it even.
Yeah.
But yes, I read the book. Yeah.
Yeah, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I read recently. Love it. I'm reading Anthony Horowitz right now. He's got a new novel. Yeah, he's got a new novel. It's called A Deadly Episode. It's not released yet, but I've got a hold of a galley copy. So,
well, I'm sure he appreciats the tip.
Yeah. Anthony Horowitz. Yeah, his books are fantastic. The last one I read, Marble Hall Murders. It had a book within the book. So you're reading the book and it's talking about an author and a problem he's had with his publisher and this book he wrote. And is there something weird about the book? And then the main character starts reading this other book. And before you know it, you've forgotten that you're reading another book.
You're reading a different book.
Yeah, and you're reading it now. You're reading a different book, and you read the whole book.
Very clever. Very
and
clever.
And you forget. And then you get to the end, and you're like, wait a minute. And it's like not finished or something. And then all of a sudden, you're back into the other book. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? Wait a minute. I just read a whole book.
What happened to that one?
It's crazy.
Well, listen, I've enjoyed talking with you, and I wish you luck on this next short story.
Thank you.
Anthology, whatever it is that ends up being. But I am somewhat jealous that you get to just say goodbye and then go outside and sail if you want.
Yeah, it's a nice sunny day out there today.
That's great. That's great.
Beautiful here in Panama.
Well, listen, how can people get in touch with you if they want, if they want to find out more about what you're up to?
PaulTrammell.com is the place to go. PaulTrammell.com. Easy to remember. I got lucky, but nobody had a website with nobody who has my name had a website with that name yet. So I got that one, PaulTrammell.com. That's got cool. Both my podcasts on it. It's got all my books.
It's very good.
Some other stuff about me. My email address is in the footer. My Substack link is in the footer of the page too. That's just paultrammell.substack.com.
It's perfect. All right. Yeah. Well, listen, good luck to you. And I enjoyed being with you today. And for everyone else, please tune in again for our next episode of Online for Authors. You have a good day.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.